I'll be a surrogate for my ex. It's a kind act, not cheating, my wife boldly said. When she got pregnant without my consent, I secretly filed for divorce, froze our accounts, and watched her life fall apart. Well, I've made a decision, Gia said, twirling pasta onto her fork with that carefree confidence she'd always had. I'm going to be a surrogate for Gadwin and Melissa. They've been trying for years, and they just can't have children. I carefully set my water glass down on the table, the ice cubes clinking against the sides. We had been married for 6 years and together for 8. I thought I knew this woman. Gadwin, I said. Your ex-Gadwin. Yes, they're desperate. James, Melissa has some condition. I don't remember the medical term, but she can't carry a pregnancy. And Gadwin has always wanted to have children. I can help them. And when did you decide this? I ran into them at Whole Foods last week. We went for coffee and caught up. They told me everything they've been through, all the failed attempts, the heartbreak. I just felt like I had to do something. I looked at my wife of 6 years. I really looked at her. Gia was beautiful. Everyone said so. Blonde hair, always perfectly styled. Green eyes that sparkled when she laughed. A smile that could light up a room. She worked as a marketing coordinator at a tech startup. She made decent money. She had a good life. Our life. You offered to carry your ex-boyfriend's baby. I said slowly, making sure I had understood correctly. It's not like that. It's a medical, clinical thing. They do an in vitro fertilization, use their embryo, and I would just be the carrier. It's completely normal. People do it all the time. Normal people, not wives who don't consult their husbands first. Gia's smile faltered slightly. I'm consulting you now. No, you're informing me. There's a difference. James, come on. I thought you would support me. This is a beautiful thing. I'm helping people I care about create a family. People you care about? You haven't mentioned Gadwin in years. Now suddenly you're willing to spend 9 months pregnant with his child. It's not his child, it's his and Melissa's child. I'm just the oven. The way she said it. So casual, so dismissive. It told me everything I needed to know about how much she had really thought about this. How much she had considered me, our marriage, our future. What did Gadwin say when you offered? I asked. He was surprised at first, but then he was so grateful, so emotional. He actually started to cry. He said I was an angel. Melissa cried too. They've wanted this for so long. I imagine they would be grateful. A free surrogacy from an ex-girlfriend. That saves them what? $60,000 at a minimum. Gia's face hardened. It's not about that. You didn't discuss compensation. No. I don't want their money. I want to help them. Gia, professional surrogates get paid because it's physically demanding, risky, and life-changing. You're giving that away to your ex. You make it sound sordid. It's not. It's generous. It's insane. She put down her fork. Her eyes were flashing. I knew you would react like this. I knew you wouldn't understand. Understand? That my wife wants to carry her ex-boyfriend's baby without asking me first? You're right. I don't understand that. I'm asking you now. You already made the decision. You said so yourself. You're just looking for my blessing after the fact. Gia. She grabbed her purse and stood up from the table. I thought you would support me. I thought you would see this for the good thing it is, but clearly you're too insecure and jealous to understand it. She walked out of the restaurant, leaving me sitting there with 2 plates of pasta and a bread basket. The waiter approached cautiously. Everything okay, sir? Just to check, please, I said. I sat for another 10 minutes, mechanically eating my pasta, thinking about what had just happened. My wife had decided, without consulting me, to become a surrogate for her ex-boyfriend. She expected me to smile and support her. She thought it was a reasonable thing. She was wrong. By the time I paid the bill and walked to my car, I knew exactly what I had to do. I didn't go home that night. I drove to my brother's house in Bellevue, showing up on his doorstep at 9 p.m. with a 12-pack of beer and a story that left him speechless. She what? Cale said, opening his 3rd beer. We were sitting in his garage, which he had converted into a man cave after his own divorce 2 years ago. He understood the value of space. She offered to be a surrogate for Gadwin Matthews, her ex from college. The baseball player, the guy she dated for like 3 years. The very one. Cale shook his head. James, that's insane. She didn't ask you first. She informed me over pasta, like she was telling me she had joined a book club. What are you going to do? I took a long pull from my beer. I'm going to let her do it. What? I'm going to tell her it's fine, that I support her, that I understand she's just helping out old friends. Why would you do that? Because if I object, I'm the bad guy. I'm the insecure husband who won't let his wife do a good deed. She'll resent me. Her friends will take her side. Everyone will think I'm a controller. So, you're just going to accept this? No. I'm going to divorce her, but I'm going to do it smartly. I'm going to protect myself legally and financially before she realizes what's happening. Cale studied me for a long moment. Have you thought about this before? I've thought about a lot of things. Gia has been different lately. Distant. She's been texting someone constantly, getting calls she doesn't answer when I'm around. I thought maybe she was planning a surprise party or something. Now I know she's been planning this with her ex-boyfriend. With your ex-boyfriend? Man. I'm sorry. I know you love her. I loved her. Maybe I still do, but I'm not going to let love make me stupid. If she wants to prioritize Gadwin and his wife over our marriage, that's her choice. But she's going to live with the consequences. What's your plan? I pulled out my phone, opened my notes app where I had been making a list on the drive over. First thing Monday morning, I'm calling Davidson and Associates. Divorce lawyers. The firm that handled your divorce, right? Yep. They're expensive, but they're good. Ask for Patricia Davidson in person. She's ruthless. Good. I want someone absolutely ruthless. Then I'm calling our bank. We have 3 joint accounts, checking, savings, and a money market account. I'm going to freeze all of them. You can do that? According to the research I did on my phone for the last hour, yes, either account holder can freeze joint accounts during a pending divorce. She won't be able to access the money, but neither will I. It all gets sorted out in the settlement. How much are we talking about? About $80,000 in total. Most of it from the inheritance my father left me last year, which I stupidly put into our joint account instead of keeping it separate. Cale winced. Rookie mistake. I know, but at least I can stop her from spending it before the divorce is final. What else? Insurance. She's on my health insurance through my job. I'm calling HR on Monday and taking her off. She'll get a COBRA notification, but that's not my problem. That's cold. That's practical. Once we're separated, I'm not legally required to keep her on my insurance. And since she's about to undergo a voluntary medical procedure that will cost thousands in prenatal care, I'm not going to subsidize it. The surrogacy. Let Gadwin and Melissa pay for it. They're the ones getting the baby. Cale raised his beer. I have to say, I didn't think you had this in you. You've always been the nice guy, the conflict avoider. Nice guy is over. Being nice got me a wife who thinks she can carry her ex's baby with no consequences. When are you going to tell her? I'm not. I'm going to file for divorce, freeze the accounts, cancel the insurance, and let her figure it out for herself. That's brutal, man. She made her choice. I'm making mine. I spent the night on Cale's couch, ignoring the 17 text messages and 4 calls from Gia. Around midnight, she sent a final text. I'm sorry how I handled this. Can we please talk when you get home? I didn't reply. Monday morning, I took a personal day from work. I was a senior accountant at a mid-sized firm in Seattle, and I had plenty of paid time off saved up. My boss didn't ask questions when I called in. By 8 a.m., I was sitting in Patricia Davidson's office in downtown Seattle, going over the details of my marriage. 6 years married, no children, no shared property. Patricia said, reviewing the notes she'd taken. Correct, we rent an apartment. My car is in my name. Hers is in hers. No joint assets, except for the bank accounts. And you want to file for divorce on the grounds of irreconcilable differences. Yes, you mentioned your wife plans to become a surrogate for another couple. Is there any suggestion of infidelity? Not physically, but emotionally. I don't know. The whole situation feels wrong. She's putting her ex-boyfriend's needs ahead of our marriage. Patricia nodded. Washington is a no-fault state, so we don't need to prove anything. But the surrogacy situation is unusual. Has she signed any contracts yet? Not that I'm aware of. She only told me 3 days ago. Good. Here's what's going to happen. We're going to file for divorce today. I'll have the papers drawn up within the hour. We'll serve her at her job. You have her work address? I do. Perfect. Service at work is legal and often more effective. It will catch her off guard, which is what we want. Simultaneously, you will freeze the joint accounts and remove her from your insurance. By the time she realizes what's happening, the legal and financial protections will already be in place. How long does a divorce take in Washington? A minimum of 90 days from filing to finalization, but with no joint property and no children. We can probably get a settlement in 4 to 6 months if she's reasonable. And if she's not reasonable, Patricia smiled. It was not a warm smile. Then we make it expensive for her. A drawn-out litigation costs money. If she can't access the joint accounts and has to pay legal fees out of pocket, she'll settle quickly. And what about the surrogacy? Can I legally stop her from doing it? No. She has bodily autonomy. But here's something to consider. Most IVF clinics require psychological evaluations for surrogates. Part of that evaluation includes assessing the stability of the surrogate's home life and support system. If she's in the middle of a divorce, many clinics will refuse to proceed. They don't want the liability. I leaned back in my chair. So, by divorcing her now, I might actually prevent the surrogacy. It's possible. At the very least, you'll complicate it significantly, and even if they proceed, she'll be dealing with the pregnancy alone, without your financial or emotional support. That's a natural consequence of her decision. How much is this going to cost me? My retainer is $5,000. If we settle quickly, probably another $3,000 to $5,000 in total fees. If she fights it, it could be more. Do it. Patricia held out her hand. Welcome to your new life, James. I shook her hand and wrote a check for $5,000. Money I'd earned, money I'd saved, money I was now spending to end my marriage because my wife couldn't see what she was throwing away. By noon, the divorce papers were filed. By 2 p.m., Gia was served at her office. By 3 p.m., I had frozen all our joint bank accounts. By 4 p.m., I had called my HR department and removed Gia from my health insurance effective immediately. By 5 p.m., my phone was blowing up. I didn't answer. Gia showed up at Cale's house at 7 that night. I was expecting her. She knew we were close, and she knew he would take my side. What I wasn't expecting was that she would bring Gadwin and Melissa with her. Cale opened the door, took one look at the three of them, and called for me. James, you have company. I walked to the door. Gia's eyes were red and swollen. She had been crying. Gadwin stood beside her, tall and still athletic at 32, with his arm around a petite, brown-haired woman who must have been Melissa. They were all looking at me like I was the villain. Can we talk? Gia asked. We can talk through our lawyers. James, please, don't do this. We can work this out. There's nothing to work out. You made your decision. I made mine. Gadwin stepped forward. Look, man, I think there's been a misunderstanding. Gia was just trying to help us. This doesn't have to end your marriage. Gadwin, with all due respect, you're the last person who should have an opinion on my marriage. I'm just saying we didn't mean to cause any trouble, but you did. You accepted my wife's offer to carry your baby without once suggesting she should talk to her husband first. That tells me exactly how much you respect our marriage. Melissa interjected in a quiet voice. We thought you knew. Gia said you were supportive. She lied. Gia's face crumpled. I didn't lie. I thought you would support me. I thought you loved me enough to understand. Love isn't about understanding terrible decisions. Love is about considering your partner before you make life-altering ones. You didn't, so you're punishing me, freezing our accounts, taking me off your insurance. Do you know what you've done? I know exactly what I've done. I've protected myself from someone who was about to drain our accounts and use my insurance to subsidize a pregnancy for her ex-boyfriend. It wasn't about that. Then what was it about, Gia? Explain it to me. Make me understand why carrying Gadwin's baby was more important than our marriage. She opened her mouth, closed it, looked at Gadwin, then back at me. I just wanted to help. At my expense. You wanted to feel like a hero, and you didn't care who paid the price. The embryo transfer is scheduled for Wednesday, she said in a quiet voice. In 2 days, we've already paid the clinic $10,000. If I back out now, we lose everything. Then I guess you have a decision to make. Gadwin put his hand on Gia's shoulder. We don't have to do this, Gia. We can find another surrogate. We can try adoption. Don't blow up your marriage over this. But I could see it in her eyes. She had already decided the embryo transfer was happening. She was going through with it, divorce or no divorce. I'm not the one blowing up the marriage, Gia said, looking at me. You are. You're ending this over something that has nothing to do with us. It has everything to do with us. You chose them over me. I didn't choose anyone over anyone. I can help them and still be married to you. Not anymore. You made sure of that when you didn't ask me first. I stepped back and closed the door. Through the wood, I could hear Gia crying. I could hear Gadwin murmuring something comforting. I could hear Melissa apologizing. Then I heard them leave. Cale appeared with 2 beers. You okay? I will be. You know she's going to go through with it, the surrogacy. I know. And you're still going to divorce her. Yes, even though a part of you still loves her. I took the beer, drank half of it in one long swallow, especially because I still love her. Because if I stay, I will resent her forever. I'll look at that baby and see betrayal. I'll look at Gadwin and Melissa and see the people my wife chose over me. That's no way to live. When did you get so smart? When I realized being nice gets you divorced at 34 with an empty bank account and a wife carrying someone else's baby. Cale clinked his beer against mine. To being smart, to surviving. I corrected. We drank, and I tried not to think about how Gia's hair smelled like lavender. How she laughed at dumb jokes. How she used to curl up next to me on Sunday mornings and say I was her favorite person. That woman was gone. She was probably gone a long time ago. I had just been too in love to notice. The embryo transfer took place on Wednesday at 11 a.m. I know because she texted me from the clinic. It's done. I'm pregnant, or I will be if this works. I hope you're happy. I didn't reply. 2 hours later, my phone rang. Unknown number. I almost didn't answer, but something made me pick it up. Mr. Foster, this is Leonard Baxter. I'm an attorney representing Gia Foster. We need to discuss the divorce proceedings. I have a lawyer. Talk to her. I've already spoken with Patricia Davidson. She's quite formidable. But before this goes any further, I need you to understand the position your wife is in. What position is that? She has no access to money. You've frozen all joint accounts. You've removed her from your insurance at a time when she is potentially pregnant. She can't pay rent. She can't buy food. She can't make her car payment. You've left her destitute. She has a job, She makes $45,000 a year. She can support herself. Her salary goes to bills and living expenses. The savings in those accounts were her emergency fund, her security. You've taken that away. That money is half mine. More than half. Actually, most of it came from my father's inheritance, which you deposited into joint accounts, thereby making it community property. But that's not the point. The point is, you're being cruel. I'm being practical. Gia made a decision that affects our marriage. I'm making decisions that affect our divorce. That's how this works. She is potentially carrying a baby right now. A baby that has nothing to do with your divorce. A baby she chose to carry for her ex-boyfriend without consulting her husband. Let's not pretend this is my fault. Mr. Foster, I am trying to negotiate in good faith here. Can we discuss terms for accessing the accounts, even temporarily? She needs money for basic expenses. No. Correct. No negotiation, no temporary access. The accounts remain frozen until the divorce is settled. If Gia needs money, she can ask Gadwin and Melissa. They're the ones benefiting from her decision. This is unconscionable. This is consequences. Gia thought she could make unilateral decisions about our marriage. Now she's learning she can't. Tell her to sign the divorce papers. Clean split 50/50ths of the accounts. After my father's inheritance is pulled out as separate property, she'll walk away with about $10,000 and her freedom to carry whoever's baby she wants. She won't accept that. Commingling the inheritance makes it community property. Then we'll let a judge decide, but I'm not unfreezing those accounts. Your client made her choice. Now she lives with it. I hung up. Kale came into the room. That was cold. It was necessary. You're really going to leave her with nothing while she's potentially pregnant. She's not pregnant with my baby. She's potentially pregnant with Gadwin's baby. Let him support her. You know he won't. He's got his own financial problems. Why do you think they needed a free surrogate? Not my problem, but it bothered me more than I wanted to admit. The image of Gia, alone, potentially pregnant, unable to access money for food, rent, or medical care. It wasn't the revenge I had imagined. It felt empty. My phone rang again. This time it was Gadwin. James, we need to talk about Gia. I have nothing to say to you. She's a mess. Man, she won't stop crying. She can't eat. She's stressed out of her mind. Do you know what that does to a pregnancy? If this transfer works, the stress could cause a miscarriage. Then maybe she shouldn't have made such a stressful decision. Are you human? She's your wife. Not for much longer. And she stopped being my problem the moment she offered to carry your baby. I'll pay for everything. Her rent, her food, whatever she needs. Just unfreeze enough money for her to function. Why would I do that? Because you're not a monster. Because somewhere under all this vengeful crap is a decent guy who married a woman he loved. The decent guy died 3 days ago in an Olive Garden. The man you're talking to now is the one surviving the fallout. I made a mistake. Okay, I shouldn't have accepted her offer without making sure you were on board. I was desperate. Melissa and I have been trying for 6 years. 6 years of failure and disappointment and feeling broken. When Gia offered, I didn't think. I just said yes. It's my fault. You're right. It is your fault. And Gia's. You both made this mess. You figure out how to clean it up. I hung up again. This time I turned off my phone. The next 2 weeks were a whirlwind of legal maneuvering and ignored phone calls. Patricia filed motion after motion, each one designed to protect my interests and complicate Gia's situation. Meanwhile, Leonard Baxter was filing counter motions, asking for emergency relief, temporary support, access to the accounts. Each and every one was denied. The judge assigned to our case, a stern woman in her 60s named Judge Caroline Pierce, reviewed the circumstances and issued a simple ruling. Both parties would maintain the status quo until the divorce proceedings were concluded. The accounts remained frozen. Gia remained off my insurance. Everything stayed exactly as I had left it. Gia was trapped. I heard through Cale, who heard it from his girlfriend, who heard it from a mutual friend, that Gia had moved in with Gadwin and Melissa. She couldn't afford her half of the rent on our apartment, and they had offered her their spare room. The irony was not lost on me. My wife was living with her ex-boyfriend while potentially carrying his baby. The pregnancy test came back positive 2 weeks after the transfer. Gia was pregnant. The embryo had successfully implanted. In 9 months, Gadwin and Melissa would have a baby, and my wife would have destroyed our marriage for nothing. I waited for the guilt, the regret, some sign that I had gone too far. It never came. Instead, I felt vindicated. Gia had made her choice. She had prioritized Gadwin and Melissa over me, our marriage, our future. She had assumed I would just accept it, that I would go along with whatever she wanted, because that's what I had always done. She had been wrong. The divorce proceedings churned forward. Patricia was relentless, arguing that my father's inheritance, $60,000 of the $80,000 in our accounts, should be considered separate property, since I could prove it had been kept separate for 6 months before I stupidly deposited it into our joint savings. It's a gray area, Patricia explained during one of our meetings. Community property law in Washington says anything acquired during the marriage is joint, but inheritances are an exception if they are kept separate. You commingled the funds by putting it in a joint account, but only recently. We can argue it was a mistake, not an intent to make it community property. What are our chances? 60 to 40 in our favor. Judges tend to protect inheritances, but it will depend on how Gia's lawyer argues it. And if we lose, then it's split down the middle. You get $40,000, she gets $40,000. And if we win, you get $60,000 plus half of the remaining $20,000, and she gets $10,000. I want to win. Then we need to be strategic. Leonard Baxter is going to paint you as vengeful and cruel. He's going to say you left your pregnant wife destitute. We need to flip that narrative. We need to show that Gia made a reckless decision without considering her husband, and that you are simply protecting yourself from that recklessness. How do we do that? We'll depose Gadwin and Melissa. We'll put them on the stand and ask them about the surrogacy agreement. We'll make it clear this wasn't a spur-of-the-moment decision by Gia. It was something she discussed with them multiple times without ever once mentioning her husband. We'll show a pattern of deception. Will it work? It will work if they tell the truth, and they will because lying under oath is perjury. The depositions were scheduled for 6 weeks after I filed for divorce. I attended Gia's deposition sitting in Patricia's conference room, watching my soon-to-be ex-wife answer questions under oath. She looked terrible. The pregnancy was already showing. She was nearly 8 weeks along, and the hormones combined with the stress had taken their toll. Her face was puffy, her eyes were sunken, her hands shook as she signed the oath papers. Mrs. Foster, Patricia began, when did you first discuss becoming a surrogate with Gadwin Matthews and Melissa Matthews about a month ago, and did you discuss this with your husband before you offered to be their surrogate? No, why not? I didn't think it was necessary. It was my body, my decision. Your body, your decision. Interesting. Did you consider how this decision would affect your marriage? I thought my husband would be supportive. Based on what had he ever expressed support for surrogacy? We had never discussed it. So you made an assumption, and based on that assumption you offered to carry another man's baby, your ex-boyfriend's baby, specifically, without consulting your husband. It sounds worse when you say it like that. How would you say it, Mrs. Foster? Gia's lawyer objected. Argumentative. Patricia smiled. I'll rephrase. Mrs. Foster, how would you describe your decision to become a surrogate? I was helping people I cared about. That's all. People you cared about more than your husband. That's not fair. Please answer the question. No, I didn't care about them more than James. I just wanted to help them. At what cost? Your marriage, your financial security, your husband's trust. I didn't think those things would happen. Why not? Because I didn't think James would be so cruel. Patricia leaned forward. Cruel. Your husband protected himself legally and financially after you made a unilateral, life-altering decision. That's not cruelty, it's self-preservation. Can you really blame him? Gia started to cry. Her lawyer called for a break. I sat there watching my wife fall apart and felt nothing but tired. Gadwin's and Melissa's depositions were scheduled for the following week. I didn't attend. Patricia said it would be better if I wasn't there, but she recorded everything and sent me the transcripts. Gadwin's testimony was enlightening. Mr. Matthews, when Gia Foster offered to be your surrogate, what was your first thought? I was shocked and grateful. We'd been trying for a baby for years and nothing was working. Gia's offer felt like a miracle. Did you ask if her husband knew about the offer? No, why not? I assumed she had discussed it with him. Gia and James have been married for years. I assumed they talked about major decisions, but you didn't verify. You never once spoke to James Foster about the surrogacy arrangement. Not until after everything blew up. So you accepted your ex-girlfriend's offer to carry your baby without once confirming that her husband was on board. I wasn't thinking. Clearly, Mr. Matthews. You weren't thinking. Did Gia ever mention any concerns about her marriage? No. She seemed happy. And yet, within days of her offering to be your surrogate, her husband filed for divorce. Does that sound like a happy marriage to you? Gadwin's lawyer objected. Patricia moved on. Melissa's testimony was even more damning. Mrs. Matthews, did you have any concerns about Gia's offer to be your surrogate? At first, yes. I thought it was strange that she offered so quickly. We had just reconnected with her, and suddenly she's offering to carry our baby. What changed your mind? Gadwin convinced me. He said Gia was just generous, that she had always been that way. Did you ever suggest that Gia should discuss this with her husband? Yes. I actually told her she should make sure James was okay with it. And what did she say? She said James would understand, that he always supported her decisions. You believed her. I wanted to believe her, but looking back I think she was lying to us and to herself. Why do you say that? Because if James was really supportive, he wouldn't have filed for divorce. It was the most honest thing anyone had said in the whole process. The judge reviewed the depositions and scheduled a settlement conference for 3 months after the initial filing. Both parties were required to attend with their lawyers. I walked into the courthouse on a cold November morning, 3 months after that disastrous dinner at Olive Garden, and saw Gia for the first time in weeks. She was visibly pregnant about 4 months along. Her belly had that distinct roundness you couldn't hide. She wore a loose-fitting dress and flat shoes, her hair pulled back in a simple ponytail. She looked exhausted. Gadwin and Melissa were not with her. She was alone, except for her lawyer. We sat in a conference room with Judge Pierce presiding. The judge looked over our file with a critical eye. "This is a mess," she said finally. "Mr. Foster, you've frozen your wife's access to marital funds during a pregnancy. Mrs. Foster, you agreed to become a surrogate without consulting your husband. You have both made terrible decisions. Now I am going to make some decisions for you." She looked at Gia first. "Mrs. Foster, the surrogacy agreement is irrelevant to these proceedings. You have bodily autonomy, and your husband cannot stop you from being a surrogate. However, your decision to pursue the surrogacy without spousal consultation shows a fundamental lack of respect for your marriage." "That is noted." Then she looked at me. "Mr. Foster, freezing all marital assets without providing any alternative support for your wife during a pregnancy, regardless of whose baby it is vengeful. You had other options. You chose the harshest one. That is also noted. Now here is what is going to happen. Your father's inheritance will be deemed separate property. You will receive $60,000. The remaining $20,000 in the joint accounts will be split equally. Mrs. Foster gets $10,000. That is your settlement." Gia's lawyers started to object. Judge Pierce held up a hand. "I'm not finished. Mrs. Foster, you will receive $10,000 and whatever personal property you brought into the marriage. Mr. Foster, you will receive your inheritance, your half of the joint accounts, and your personal property. You will both retain your respective vehicles. This marriage is dissolved effective immediately. Do you have any questions?" "That's not fair," Gia said. "I'm entitled to half of everything. You are entitled to what the law says you are entitled to. Your husband successfully argued that his inheritance should be separate property. I agree with him. The remaining joint assets are split equally. If you wish to appeal, you are welcome to, but I will warn you that appeals are expensive and rarely successful." Gia looked at her lawyer, who gave a slight shake of his head. She had already spent thousands on legal fees. She didn't have the money for an appeal. "I'll sign," she said quietly. We signed the papers right there in the conference room. Judge Pierce witnessed it and stamped it. Just like that. After 6 years of marriage, it was over. Gia stood up to leave, paused and looked at me. "Was it worth it destroying everything we had over this?" "You destroyed it," I said. "I just refused to go down with the ship. I was trying to do something good. You were trying to feel important. There's a difference." She left without another word. Patricia shook my hand. "Congratulations. You're a free man. Why doesn't it feel like a victory?" "Because a divorce never feels like a victory. But you protected yourself. That's all you can do." The money hit my account 2 weeks later. $60,000 from the inheritance, plus my $10,000 share of the joint accounts. $70,000 more money than I had had since my father died. I used $20,000 to pay Patricia's legal fees. Another $10,000 went to Cale as back rent for the months I'd been living with him. The remaining $40,000 went into a new, separate, protected, my own savings account. I moved into a 1-bedroom apartment in Capitol Hill. I started dating again. Nothing serious, just coffee dates and dinners with women who didn't remind me of Gia. I got back to work, got a promotion, focused on rebuilding my life, and then, 6 months after the divorce was final, I got a call that changed everything. "James, it's Melissa." I almost hung up, but curiosity got the better of me. "What do you want?" "I need to tell you something. Something you deserve to know. I don't want to hear about the baby." "It's not about the baby, it's about Gadwin." I sat down. "I'm listening." "They're together. Gia and Gadwin. They have been for months, since before she offered to be our surrogate." The world tilted. "What?" "I didn't know until recently. I found text messages on Gadwin's phone. They've been having an affair since last spring. The surrogacy wasn't about helping us. It was so she could have Gadwin's baby. She played all of us." "That doesn't make sense. The baby is yours. You used your embryo." "No, they didn't. I found the clinic records. Gadwin switched the embryo order. They used his sperm and Gia's egg. The baby Gia is carrying is not mine, it's theirs." I couldn't breathe, couldn't think. "Why are you telling me this?" "Because you deserve to know the truth. Because I'm divorcing Gadwin. And I want you to understand that you weren't wrong. You weren't cruel. You were right to protect yourself. Gia lied to everyone." "How long have you known?" 2 weeks. I've been gathering evidence. I have the text messages, the clinic records, everything. I'm filing for divorce, and I'm suing them both for fraud." "You can prove it?" "I can prove everything. And James, I'm sorry. I'm sorry we believed her. I'm sorry we helped her destroy your marriage. Gadwin and I were just so desperate for a baby that we didn't see what was right in front of us. After she hung up, I sat in my apartment for 3 hours processing what I had learned. Gia had been having an affair. The surrogacy was a cover. She had deliberately gotten pregnant with Gadwin's baby and made me think it was an altruistic gesture. I had divorced her thinking she was misguided. She was reckless. It turned out she was just a liar. The news broke 2 months later when Melissa's lawsuit hit the courts. She sued Gadwin for fraud, emotional distress, and breach of contract. The local news picked it up. Surrogacy scam. Woman allegedly fakes surrogacy to have lover's baby. Gia's name was all over the Seattle news sites. Her face, older now, hardened by pregnancy and stress, stared back at me from article after article. The comment sections exploded with judgment and condemnation. Gadwin lost his job. Gia lost hers too. Neither of them could show their faces in public without being recognized. And I watched it all unfold from the safety of my new life, feeling a satisfaction I hadn't felt since this whole nightmare began. Kale called me the day the news broke. You see the news? Yep. How do you feel? Vindicated. That's it. Just vindicated. What else should I feel? I was right. Gia was lying. I protected myself. That's all I wanted. You're not even a little bit sad. I'm sad I wasted 6 years on a woman who turned out to be a liar and a cheater. But I'm not sad I divorced her. Best decision I ever made. You're cold, man. I'm a realist. Gia made her choices. Now she lives with them. Not my problem, but it bothered me more than I wanted to admit. I loved Gia once. I really loved her. And now that love was tainted by betrayal, lies, and the knowledge that everything I had believed about our marriage was false. The baby was born in March, almost exactly a year after that dinner at Olive Garden. I didn't go to the hospital. I didn't send flowers or congratulations, but I heard through mutual friends that it was a girl, 7 pounds, healthy, beautiful. Gadwin and Gia were together, living in a small apartment in Kent, struggling to make rent and support a newborn on Gadwin's unemployment checks and whatever freelance work Gia could scrounge up. Melissa won her lawsuit. The judge awarded her $50,000 in damages, money that Gia and Gadwin didn't have and probably could never repay. And I sat in my comfortable apartment, drinking a beer, watching the sunset over Seattle, and finally felt like I could breathe again. 2 years after the divorce, I was sitting in a coffee shop in Fremont when Gia walked in. I recognized her immediately, though she looked different, thinner, older, tired. Her hair was shorter, streaked with gray. She hadn't bothered to dye it. She was carrying a diaper bag and pushing a stroller. She saw me the same moment I saw her. Her face went pale. For a moment, I thought she would leave, that she would turn and walk out rather than face me. But she didn't. She stood in line, ordered her coffee, and when she had it, she walked over to my table. James, Gia, can I sit down? It's a free country. She sat, the stroller beside her. I could see the top of a small head, brown curls sleeping peacefully. This is Emma, Gia said. She's 2. Congratulations. I know you know the truth about Gadwin, about everything. Melissa told me. I figured. I'm sorry I lied, that I manipulated you about everything. Are you sorry, or are you sorry you got caught? She looked down at her coffee. Both, probably. I was selfish and stupid. I convinced myself I was doing something noble, but really, I just wanted Gadwin back. I wanted the life we could have had if we'd stayed together, and I was willing to destroy everything else to get it. And how did that work out for you? Not well, obviously. Gadwin and I are barely scraping by. He can't hold a job. I can't get any decent freelance work because everyone knows who I am. Melissa's judgment hangs over our heads like a guillotine. We'll probably be paying it off for the rest of our lives. Good. She flinched. I deserve that. You deserve worse. Probably. But for what it's worth, I am sorry. I'm sorry I hurt you. You were a good husband, better than I deserved. Was any of it real? Our marriage? Yes, I loved you at the beginning, James. I really did. But then Gadwin came back into my life, and all those old feelings came rushing back. I told myself I could have both of you, you and him. I was wrong. Yes, you were. She stood up, gathered her things. I won't bother you again. I just wanted you to know that I'm sorry and that you were right to leave me. You deserve better. I know. She left, pushing the stroller out into the gray Seattle drizzle. I sat for a long time finishing my coffee, thinking about everything that had happened, the betrayal, the divorce, the revelations, the revenge, and I realized something. I wasn't angry anymore. I wasn't hurt. I felt nothing but relief that I had gotten out when I did. Gia had made her choices. Gadwin had made his. They had built a life together on a foundation of lies and betrayal, and now they were living with the consequences. I was free. Free to build a new life. Free to find someone who would actually respect me. Free to be happy. That was the real revenge. Not the frozen accounts, or the divorce, or the vindication. The real revenge was moving on and building something better. while they struggled in the mess they had created. I finished my coffee, stood up, and walked out into the rain. I had plans for dinner with a woman named Rebecca, a kindergarten teacher, kind, funny, honest, someone who communicated, someone who respected boundaries, someone who was everything Gia was not. I smiled as I walked to my car. Life was good. Life was finally, genuinely good. And Gia could live with her choices.